Colin Hanks and Sean Stewart, you are the director and producers of the documentary All Things Must Pass about Tower Records, the history of Tower Records. What was the genesis of this project?
Sean and I are both originally from Sacramento, California, where Tower was founded and was based. And when the stores were closing in 2006, I was having dinner with an old family friend of mine in New York City, and she had sort of mentioned in passing how Russ Solomon got started. He started selling used 78s out of his father's drugstore in 1941. And, I knew Tower. I shopped at Tower. I loved Tower, but I didn't really know a lot about the company, about the history. And that sounded like a pretty incredible place for a documentary to start. And closing 192 stores around the world seemed like a pretty interesting ending. And so that was the initial sort of seed. I sort of did some research on it and sort of became invested, and then approached Sean about hopping on board.
And what was the nature of your collaboration together? Had you two worked together before?
We've known each other, God, we've known each other since we were 13 years old. So this was actually our maiden voyage on this project. But we knew, there was always been talk in our friendship about at some point, working together or finding some facet to work together in. And with this being that common kind of civic pride thread for both of us, and we, both were in agreement that there was probably a wonderful story to explore here. I think we both felt this was a great jumping off point.
So I was, what were some of your personal recollections of Tower Records, like that make you hold this, made you hold this, store so fondly in your memory, when especially when the stores were closing, I'm guessing.
Well, I spent a lot of my time going to record stores growing up. I still do. That hasn't ended. But I obviously knew about Tower Records. I knew that it was from Sacramento. I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really know much about the company's history, but I did have my godmother worked out of San Francisco, and I think Sacramento as well at some point. So I had known that she had worked for the company at a stage, and had actually she had actually gotten a horrible car accident when she was working at Tower, and needed to make like the insurance claim, but in order to do that, she needed to prove that she was still an employee, and so the manager at the store at the time sent her the little like dividers for all the vinyl records, and gave her a pen and said, "Here, just write out the band's names, and you're currently working at Tower." So I had heard those kinds of stories through her, but I didn't really know much of the history. I just knew that I had spent a lot of time there, and I loved the store.
Yeah, that's definitely an experience that it's tough for people who are a bit younger than me. I'm almost 30, to understand the idea of going to a record store and being able to just be there and to have an experience just being in there.
Yeah, I think we both have young children. The world's changed drastically in the last 10 years since Tower left the market, and I think we both bemoan kind of it being an important part of our childhood. I remember spending hours upon hours in Tower books when I was very young with my family, and it was a place to learn and explore. I was always a little nervous to go into the record store when I was that young because it was so cool. But our kids are never gonna experience the world that way. They're not gonna have that brick and mortar human interaction in a record store the way that it was common for everyone. And I think that's part of really what spoke to us about this story was just in the title of the film, how drastic of a change we had gone through, and how a major cycle and I think our culture and the way we consume art had really come and gone.
One of the interesting things I found at the beginning, I found towards the end of the movie, and I guess it's not really a spoiler because it's very easy to find fact, is that there are still Tower Record stores open in Japan. And I was wondering, are they still open? I was very curious about that. How are they still open?
It's a couple of different facets. It's still very much collector culture in Japan. Part of the art of custom is also very much highly regarded in Japan. Working hard for a company, making sure that you thank the customer, essentially customer service. The art of selling things is very it's a craft over there that they take very seriously. There's also one of the sort of more interesting sort of facets. In Japan, they sort of believe that they get everything kind of a few years after America does, which is obviously very different from our opinions as Americans as Japan. We sort of think that they have all the great technology and we get it later. But Japan, call it much like baseball, as part of the post-World War life, they're just used to getting things a little bit later. And so in Japan, they just sort of feel that they're always a little bit behind the times, and they know that streaming exists, and they know that it's coming around the bend. But that art of custom, the collector culture, there are a couple of things that really stand out as making Japan an incredibly unique place, obviously.
Yeah, that just makes me want to visit Japan even more to be in one of those stores again. Yeah. You just don't see them anymore. And there's a mall closing nearby me, and and another mall by me has no music store. I just can't believe how much things are changing. But that's also because I'm crabby and don't like change. So I wanted to pose this question as like a light question. Suppose you actually worked at a Tower Record for one day, and you got to choose the playlist, an album playlist of like 3 to 5 albums that would play during your shift. What albums would those be?
Take that away, Colin.
Oh, well, listen, I'm trying to. For me, it's not so much about
we're so preloaded on the what songs, not
that's why
not what albums. This is
I
a
want
whole
to
different.
change this up if I can.
Yeah.
So I'm in my office right now, and I'm not going to give you the answer on the playlist, but I will do this. I'm going to turn the camera around and see if you can see my bin there. So I kind of just decided to just go all in and just have the record store in my office anyways. So I'll play everything in that bin, and that's not even the full collection. That's just the stuff that I can't listen to in the house with the wife and kids around. So I'll take a little bit of everything, to be quite honest. That's my cheat. I'm not giving you the pat answer. I'm giving you the new one.
All right, just mark that down on your record here.
Okay. It's funny too. I think when we started making the movie, Colin was very adamant that he wanted to make sure that we had music that represented every aisle of a Tower Records, because the deep catalog you had, world music, hip hop, country, soundtrack. And that he really wanted to make sure we checked every box and really followed the genre, along with following the eras that the movie was, as we were exploring these different eras that Tower lived in, make sure that soundtrack brought you back to that place. And I think that was kind of one of the exciting parts of making this movie, was watching that soundtrack come together. It kind of felt like we really did grab onto a playlist that would have held its own in any Tower Records location.
Yeah, that's one of the things I forgot about Tower Records, because we have one here in DC. It's in Foggy Bottom, and I think that's the one that Dave Grohl worked at. You really had a good selection of every genre you could imagine. Especially like world music. I listen to Peter Gabriel, and I hear him bring up artists that, of course, you could hardly find at any other record store.
Not at a mall, that's for sure. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, that was sort of looking back on my own personal history with Tower, I didn't know anything about their sort of what we kind of called the tenets of Tower, the sort of we didn't know about the things that they really very specifically set out to do, things like having a deep inventory, having a vast catalog of artists to choose from, trying to stock as many different kinds of music as possible. All those things I didn't really quite understand, but yet I instinctively knew whenever I walked into a store, and I specifically noticed it when I walked into a store that was not Tower Records.
Yes.
That was, sort of these record stores that were kind of thrown together in a mall. Do you know what I mean? Like a warehouse or anything like that. And I don't mean to rain on any of the other stores, but Tower did have a very specific sort of mentality, which was that it was not just one record store, but it was really a selection of different record stores all under one roof. So there was the jazz record store, there was the classical record store, there was the rock, the pop, the world music, pretty much everything was all under one roof. And that kind of decision that they made really made it stand apart from all the other record stores. It really made Tower an incredibly unique place, not only to work at and to shop at, but obviously just a unique music retailer. And I think there were a lot of other stores that tried to do that and really couldn't.
And it's definitely just such an intriguing place. I'm still just having the memories of a store like that. I want to just segue into something a little bit different, Colin, because you recently, last year, you were nominated for an Emmy for Fargo, and we are an awards site. What was that experience like, getting nominated and being a part of that?
It's a surreal experience, to say the least. Just because it happens every year doesn't mean that it's not completely mind-blowing when it actually happens to you. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely a fun experience. I was still kind of shocked that so many people had responded to that first season the way that they did, and it was a lot of fun. I definitely really enjoyed it, and I went back the following year to present and had a whole lot more fun as a presenter than I did as a nominee. But that said, it would be fun to be able to go back again. It was good. It was a fun time.
And I was wondering, do you know of any? This film was actually the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences released their list a couple weeks ago of all the documentaries that would be eligible for this year's documentary feature Oscar, and right at the top is All Things Must Pass. So I was wondering, do you know of any potential Oscar campaign that might be being mounted for this?
Well, unfortunately, we can't really. It's all sort of self-generated. So obviously, we put ourselves up for submission, and we'd love to be able to make the short list if we can, because we really believe in this film. Unfortunately, you're looking at the campaign, really. This and an ad that we purchased last week. That's pretty much the campaign. It's hard because we're obviously an incredibly small independent film. And I sort of feel that, especially with documentaries, there's this sort of stigma that they need to be incredibly important films. They need to be about a cause. They need to be about either someone we know incredibly well that we need to learn some new side of, or it's this important cause that takes place in a faraway land that we need to know about for humanitarian reasons. And when we went out trying to secure financing for this film, a lot of people just said no one cares about a company that went bankrupt. It's not a personal story. And we always begged to differ. We said, here is a much beloved company that not only hundreds of thousands of people worked at, but millions of people shopped at. They all have a personal connection to the store. But more importantly, the people that worked there and the stories that we wanted to tell, we knew were impactful. We knew they were dramatic. We knew that ultimately this isn't just a story about a bunch of people, living this sort of rock and roll lifestyle and getting crazy, that this is really a film about people that spent a better part of their lives working to build something and then watch it get taken away from them. And, people, forging these friendships and then having to fire each other, it's much more than a film just about a chain of stores that people liked. And so we as the filmmakers really sort of feel that why not this movie? Why can't this movie be deemed just as important as some of those other ones? Albeit there's some other very, very incredible documentaries that are out right now, but we just sort of feel that the response that this film has gotten has really surprised us and sort of made us realize, like, yeah, why not this? It also helps that the film starts with the letter A, so you're always at the top
right
of
at
the
the
list.
top of the ballot.
Yeah, that helps. That helps. We learned that out in the film festivals.
No, you don't know how many times we have gone over this with the Emmy balloting, and people being at the top of the ballot definitely helping them.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, but I mean, also, you had 2 or 3 years ago, you had a documentary called "The Act of Killing," which was all about genocide that had won all the critics awards. But then at the Oscars, it lost to a film called 20 Feet from Stardom, all about backup singers trying to make it in the music world. So, you never count anything out.
Yeah, no, we definitely, I'm fans of both of those films, and I think obviously, the Academy tries to do a very good job of making sure that all different kinds of films are represented, and ours, we sort of feel, is good enough to maybe be on, maybe just a short list, maybe just a short list. I don't know. We'll wait and see. Who knows?
It's not too much to ask. It's not too much to ask. And so I think it's very interesting that you chose, a lot of people will go into directing, but that you chose to do a documentary as your first feature film. Was there any? I don't want to say is there anyone you copied, but was there any documentary filmmaker that you saw their work and you thought to yourself when you were making this movie, I want to capture something in that realm or in that manner?
No, no, not really. The only two, gosh, you want to know what? I would say the only documentary that I really stole from was Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii, which I wanted to shoot the empty store. I wanted to shoot the empty store like that. That was the only one that was really sort of that I really looked at. I looked at all sorts of documentaries. But I really, what I tried to do is, and I had this conversation with Sean as well as our editor Darren Roberts. I said, I'm not necessarily looking at other documentaries and finding stuff that I want to do. I'm looking at other documentaries and finding what I don't want to do. And so part of that was really more along the lines of, I don't want to have a narrator. I don't want to have all of our talking head, all of our famous celebrities in the first 3 minutes of the film telling you why this film is important. We've made it. We're saying that it's important. That was really more. I tend to work more from that realm of here's what I don't want this to be, and let's find out what it can be. Because you can have all the intentions in the world of what you want your film to be. It's gonna tell you what it is eventually. Time and resources, or lack of resources, or lack of time are going to tell you what the film is. And so we were much more interested in trying to break some of the conventions that we noticed in some other, specifically music documentaries.
And so I'm going to wrap this up, but there's so many fun things about this movie. What was your well, I don't want to ask what was your favorite thing that you learned in there for each of you, but what was like the thing that made you have like the biggest double take when you were listening to the interview that made you go, wait, what?
Ooh. Um,
You know, I think it was really starting to understand in Los Angeles the sheer amount of musicians that frequent in the store. I had no idea that it was, you know, I knew that it was the place where people bought music and celebrated music, but I didn't really know the volume of artists that actually shopped there, and how impactful that was for the employees, but also how impactful that was, I think, for the music community in Los Angeles and New York and Nashville and some of these big music cities. You know, these were you'd walk into a store and you'd mingle with, you know, Peter Townsend and you know, Eric Clapton and some of these major artists. That was an interesting reveal for me as we were kind of going through the process.
I think one of the interesting things for me is just finding out just how seat of the pants everything was. You know, you sort of think, oh, well, it was $1 billion company. Surely they must have had, you know, a real serious plan. You know, when we first met Russ Solomon, I thought we were going to be dealing with a very important, you know, CEO businessman. I wasn't expecting, you know, Russ Solomon to be this guy that was just sort of so casual and so sort of open. So I think more than anything, I was just surprised at how sort of improvisational everything kind of was. You know, they had an idea, they had a gut feeling, and they went for it. And that was sort of, in a strange way, ended up really making that really left an impression on me, and sort of we made the film that way, in that very same way. You know, Russ would hire people that he felt were smart, that had good ideas, and then he got out of their way and let them work. And you know, we sort of made the movie the same way. Everyone that we brought on to our team was the same sort of mentality. You know, between Stephen Leckhart, our writer, and Darren Roberts, our editor, to Glenn Zipper, to pretty much everyone on the crew. You know, I never tried to tell anybody how to do their job. I let them do their job and just asked them to help me try and bring this thing to life, you know, and gave them ownership of it. And that's purely because that's the way that Russ operated, you know, and ultimately that really, that thing that Russ instilled is really why Tower means so much to so many people. That, you know, if you had to really sort of put your finger on one thing, you know, Russ giving people that freedom really changed the way people looked at you know, working at Tower and that job, and really made it a place that everyone could sort of call their own. It didn't matter what you looked like, it didn't matter what your interests were. You know, if you showed up and you did your job and you worked hard, you know, you could help, you know, really be part of something and help create something incredibly special and unique. And you know, I'd like to think that we were able to do a similar thing with the documentary, and you know, we'd like to think that it's a sort of an extension of Tower.
Well, I can certainly tell you that it's one of the. I just love one of the part when I saw the movie. One of the things I consistently always got a laugh, and this was like the recurring theme you were talking about, was when people would say, when the employees would say, "Well, we didn't really have this position," and so the other guy said, "You should do that position," and so I said, "Okay."
Yeah. Yep.
Especially the guy with the mustache, the guy with the
yeah.
him. That was, and I'm sure you get a lot of people telling you that guy with the mustache. Yeah. Just hearing him talk about some of those operations were just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Russ says it flat out. He says, we had no idea what we were doing, but we did it anyway. And that was, you know, to hear that from Russ, it really showed that it doesn't really matter what you know or what you don't know. It's really more about just your passion and wanting to see it through. That's really all anything is when you really sort of break it down. It's just, as long as you're passionate, you don't want to give up, then give it a shot. Why not?
Well, Colin and Sean, thank you so much for talking to us. People, if you have not seen this movie, you should keep an eye out for when it's in your town. What's the website to see where it's playing?
TowerRecordsMovie.com.
Yep.
TowerRecordsMovie.com. You've been told. Go see it. There's no excuse. And Colin and Sean, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having us.
us.